जानता हूँ मैंने क्या देखा है।
नारू, ऐसा कुछ नहीं हमारे बीच में।
It gives me a great pleasure to introduce a filmmaker who I've had a fantastic interview with before for a podcast that was done pre-pandemic. And now, looking at the amazing success of his latest film, Jaane Jaan on Netflix, it's wonderful to welcome him on Filme Shilmy once again. Sujoy Ghosh, a warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anuj. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. I mean, you've been seeing the response on Netflix. It's been huge. I think everyone
Yeah.
has been lapping up the film. I think for you, it's quite special because you have obviously done a Netflix series before, but for an original film, I think this is arguably your first-ish venture. So,
Yeah.
how would you say making a film, bearing in mind the sort of audiences that are watching OTT, how do you think that's kind of differed from you making a feature film for a theatrical release?
Well, in terms of the content, it didn't really differ much, you know. So when you're looking at a content, I'm still serving my audience in India, the Hindi-speaking audience, right? Primarily. So the content in terms of choosing and giving it to my audience remains the same, whether I'm doing a theatrical, whether I'm doing a long form or but however, when I'm doing something for Netflix, my benchmark becomes that much more stringent towards the technical side.
Sure.
Like my camera, my edit, my sound, my color, my grading, my VFX, that has to be on par with the rest of the global stuff that you see on Netflix, or any other digital platform for that matter. So I think that kind of guided me a lot. That was always in the back of my mind because I am actually competing with global products, right? Even though I still would want to do that when I'm doing a theatrical, but here it just seemed that much more, it just seemed that much more in my head. And also, we tried something new in terms of the edit, which we can do on, I guess, on a digital platform. Like we go a lot of close, we do a lot of close-ups, we do a lot of sharp cuts, we do a lot of designing, which would keep you interested in a smaller screen. On a big screen, what happens, Anuj? We have some helping hand from the screen to keep you invested.
Yeah.
You're completely. It's a massive screen looking down upon you, but here you're looking down upon the screen. So yeah, so you would have to. I would have to have certain ploys to keep Anuj invested, and I'm saying somebody like you who's used to seeing global products, right, would expect that, here I can't come to you and say, hey, Anuj, but I'm making a Hindi film, so you'll have to, adjust. Fuck off, So you won't, right?
Yeah.
You won't, because I chose this platform. You didn't choose it for me.
True.
So I have to, if I'm coming if I'm coming to your house, I have to follow the rules of your house.
Right. Absolutely. No, it's wonderful. And I think the way you've adapted the novel, the Japanese novel, is really phenomenal. Suspect X, the devotion of Suspect X. I think when you were sort of bearing that in mind, because you've obviously customized and adapted a Spanish film before in Badla. So when you have international literature or visual works, what factors do you consider when tailoring it to a specific Indian audience, even though you are, of course, competing with other global titles as well on the platform like Netflix?
Well, primarily my audience, So if I am going to tell a story to my audience here in India, the characters, the world has to be palatable to them, has to be identifiable to them. It has to be something they can relate to. Okay, so if when I was given Badla, I was given the screenplay, I was given the written material of Paulo. So for me, it was like adapting a book. so which I had to curtail and kind of made it in how it would happen within our society.
Mm.
You know, how, for example, Kareena Maya as a single mother in Kalimpong is different, would be way different to a single mother in the UK or the US.
Mm.
You know, so I keep that. I keep that in mind in terms of what are the social norms, what are the cultural norms, what are the environmental factors or guiding factors for her and where she would be. So when you see a single mom in Kalimpong, you don't think, that's not possible. You should see her and think, yeah, that could be me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I think also the exteriors are also very important in your films. I remember we spoke about Kahani. I wrote an entire article actually about Durga Puja and the way
Yeah.
how Vidya Bagchi's character, in a way, becomes an embodiment of Durga. I mean, when we see in the photo and the poster of the film, to what she actually ends up doing in the movie too. That was a really beautiful love letter to Kolkata. Here, Kalimpong, it almost seems like you're paying homage to Kalimpong, which again, I've not seen many Indian films that have really been centered there, which I think is quite unique as well for us as viewers. So I guess when you were sort of having, paying a homage to a beautiful city or a beautiful, a place like that, and then also with a dark storyline, how do
Yeah.
you balance both those aspects?
I think it has something to do with knowing the place, Anuj, you know. So when you know something, you know how to exploit it. Exploit may be the wrong word to use here, but the fact is you would know which bit of Kalimpong to use to add to your storytelling. When do you catch Kalimpong? Which bit of roads will be nicely fogged out to create that mystery? You know, where do you place a momo joint where they would go and have momo and it look equally interesting? So I think it's just basic fact that, for example, I knew Kalimpong, I could set Jaane Jaan there, I knew Kolkata, I set Kahani there. I used to go to Aviemore quite often when I was studying in Manchester. So I said Badla in Aviemore. So, so when you know something, you know in your head, that's the kind of design I want, you could do it. And I'm guessing, yeah, if I was from, let's say, Delhi or Chennai, I would have chosen something around there.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have chosen Dehradun or Missouri, or or if I was Chennai, I would have probably chosen Ooty or something. I don't know, but since I'm very acquainted with Kolkata, and that's part of the world, I knew how to do it. So.
And again, what I really find fascinating is if we look at Kahani, for example, the main female protagonist has two male characters as well accompanying her. One is in support of her and one is against her. Like, of course, we have Nawaz and then we had Parombrata. Here again, we have, of course, Kareena Kapoor Khan, Jaideep Ahlawat, who's guiding her, almost a Sarthi of of that whole scenario. And then, of course, you have Vijay Varma, who's sort of tracking them down as the cop. What particularly fascinates you about having this template of characters in your films in particular?
It's weird you mentioned this, so I'll have to just take you back a little. So I met Kahani, and I think we also spoke after Kahani, and I was fresh off Kahani, and then I was given this book. Okay. And when I was making Kahani, there's one thing I really always wanted to do, which I am quite in awe of, which is a doomed love story, like a King Kong, Beauty and the Beast, like where it's not going to happen, yeah, but yet you don't give up, yet you keep at it, yet you're relentless in your pursuit of love, in your giving of love. Yeah. So I mean a lot of in awe, in respect of these people who can actually do it. And I attempted something like that in Kahani, where Rana had this unrequited love for Vidya. But he knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. It was going to freaking end then and there. But yet he was always supportive of her. Yet he was always by her side, always comforting her and saying, no, your husband will come back, and I'm going to take money from him, and always inspiring her and being that pillar of support. And then post Kahani, I was given this book to read, which was Devotion of Suspect X. And when I was reading this book, I was told that it's a fantastic murder mystery. All I could see, Anuj, was a love story. The exact love story which I was trying to attempt in Kahani, but in a mammoth bigger way, more mind-bending, more mind-numbing, more twisted, more complicated, more honorable, more noble. I mean, many, many more of everything which I tried to attempt in Kahani. And that's all I saw in that book, a love story.
Right.
And which I really wanted to do, because I tried that in Kahani. I couldn't take it to its culmination. But here I was been given an opportunity, right, where I could take a similar doomed love story and fucking make a whole film out of it, So that's how, and these are coincidences, they're the coincidences, but very happy and welcoming coincidences, if I may say so. So that's how this happened. So so it was like a knockoff effect from Kahani. It happened to me on Devotion. And also, what happens here, the emotional tug of the characters really attract me, which I think I like pulling those things off on screen, like how teacher felt, how much he was hoping that Maya would fall in love with him, how much he tried everything, and how he accepted the fact that she said there's nothing between us. So these emotional tugging, I think, always works, like how Rana was hurt when Vidya didn't look at him. So yeah, and I think all of us has gone through that. So these are very identifiable emotions. So for me, it works hugely. And that's मैं यही करता हूँ.
I think internalized pain is definitely something which you've managed to really portray well in your films. I mean, I think for me, if there's one example I can definitely say, I think it's in Badla. When we look at Amrita Singh and Amitabh Bachchan's characters as well, for the longest amount of time we thought it was Taapsee. And I think the way you sort of shift and show that in the female characters is brilliant. And I think it's very rare where you've had Indian filmmakers. I mean, there are many who have done really well. Of course, Bansali is one example. If we look back traditionally, Satyajit Ray, who's really understood as a male, from male gaze, to really portray the life and the struggles of a woman in this patriarchal society. It's very tough for filmmakers to do. So what do you think has helped you to understand, the story of a woman through the male lens? How did you does gender politics necessarily come into play when you are writing this?
Not really. It's just that I've been surrounded by strong women as I was growing up. Like I keep saying, I have two mothers. There's one who gave birth to me. There's one who adopted me. I've seen these two extremely strong women by me. My wife is an extremely strong woman. My daughter is an extremely stubborn woman. And so I have seen a lot of strong, and I have seen this, and I see changes in women, Anuj, which I normally don't see in men. Like I've seen my wife going from a normal, happy-go-lucky person to suddenly an extremely responsible and caring person when she became a mother. It was an overnight change. Like boom, it happened. So these kind of traits kind of fascinates me. How does that happen? I mean, who turns the switch on and which switch gets turned on? And where do they get this strong sense of protectiveness? The songs sense of kind of selfless love, which they have for the children, which they have. Like if you see Maya, she's relentless. She gets up in the morning, all she does is comb her hair, put a jacket on, do everything in the house, go out, freaking walk in the cafe, come back, cook, wash his clothes. But it's just boom, 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 boom. She's just going around in a cycle, right? But where do they get the energy from? Where do they But it's that sense of responsibility they have.
Hmm.
It's something in the head, some wiring in the head, which gives them this huge sense of responsibility, huge sense of accountability, which I guess they use to protect us, to look after us, to do whatever it's needed, and that's how it happened. And also, when you read, when I've been growing up, when I watch Ray, when I watch Rituparna Ghosh's movies and all, they have very strong women characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
They inspire, very inspire. So, like, I got a call from Sharmila Tagore,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah. So she really liked the film. So I asked her, there was an ode to Sharmila Tagore in the film, and so I had to point it to her, like if in the first film, Opus Shangshar, which is by Ray,
Of course.
the first image of Sharmila Tagore is through a small hole, just one eye of her you get to see. Yeah, and that's how Jaideep wakes up. When Jaideep wakes up from his dream, you just see his one eye opening. And yeah, so that's my homage to Ray. I can't do without him in every film. So, and that's my homage to Vinkudi. Yeah. So this is what I've learned. So I keep putting it in.
No, but your references to Ray are pretty palpable in your films, though, to be honest. And I mean, I've discovered Ray only recently, so for me, I've been obsessed with his work. But now, with the development of experience and watching and studying some of his films, like again, I think in Kahani, you play homage to some of his films like Charulata, even certain scenes of Nayak as well.
And all the framings were from Mohanagor. So yeah, because we learn by watching. We learn by reading, by watching, by listening. And but then you don't do it. You don't just take what I'm trying to say. You shouldn't be lazy. You shouldn't be lazy and just boom, like my whole sequence in Kahani where she's going at the god down, going down, and with Amitji singing Akla Chalo Re, she's going from window to window to window to window. That is like how Chauru was doing, when that guy going duk, 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 duk,
yeah.
And she's going through her, that eyeglass, and she's looking. So yeah, you do, you learn, and you try to and you try to do better. Not better is not the right word, Anuj. I guess you try to put it in your own words. You put it in your own words. Like if you see Diwar, right? Have you seen Diwar?
Of course, who hasn't?
Okay. So in Diwar, this man never goes up to the temple, right? Never, ever. Fucking nothing's gonna make him get up to the temple and
speak to God.
God. One day his mom falls ill. He said, fuck it. He goes up and he says, look, you are. So he gives God his most precious thing, his ego, his pride and everything. He puts it at the Lord's feet for his mother, right? So that's the emotion. And if you see Kahani, it's the same emotion which you do when Vishnu finally gives the radio to Vidya.
Yeah.
Which he would never part with. He would never part with the radio, right? But only at the moment he sees her crying, and that's the only thing he can do to. So these are the things we learn from the masters. That's what Yash Chopra has taught me. So I learn, I put it in Kahani. So this is how we. ऐसे होता है.
I think devotion is a very good theme actually as well. I mean, I'm going to go back to your first film, Jhankaar Beats. Because that is a classic example of devotion. Obviously, not in the spiritual sense, but more of when you are a fan, when you are an artist, and you look up to, whether it's a filmmaker or a musician, like how they idolized R.D. Burman. And I think that was such a beautiful homage. I mean, I was a kid when Jhankaar Beats came out, but my father really identified with that movie because they've all grown up hearing R.D. Burman's music, right?
Yeah.
So again, whether it's I think here in Kahani as well, devotion again like was more again spiritual. It was more of that. So again, devotion, whether it's films or even spirituality, Sujoy, how much are these really important in your life as well? And do you think that's what really helps you to channelize that through your films?
Yeah, I mean, they're very important. I mean, but for me, work is important. The person is never important for me. I would recognize you by the interviews that you do, the information that you present to me. I don't give a shit about what Anuj is in his real life. That's none of my business. So again, when I pay a homage, when I, for me, and I think that keeps me going. So when I do something on R.D. Burman or Kishore Kumar, it's their work. It's their work which inspires me. It's their work which keeps me going. You know, it's the work which is aspirational for me to, you know. So if at least reach that level or better it, or you know, keep going. So and I think that's how I'm devoted to their work. I'm not devoted to that person as such,
True. Yeah.
but I'm definitely devoted to their work. I love because I don't know that person. I don't want to know that person. You know, like I was offered to do a biopic on R.D. Burman,
Wow.
but honestly, it doesn't attract me. I don't want to know him as a person. Why would I want to know him as a person? I don't know who wants to know. Like, that's why biopics are something I don't know, man. I'm not very hot on biopics because I identify with work more than the person. So yeah, so that's me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's me.
But I think also the beauty about the cast and the leads you choose in your films, the female ones, I feel they have a certain star power. They have a certain lineage or sort of superstardom that they have. I mean, like Kareena in Jaane Jaan, Vidya Balan in Kahani, and it just was so ironic when Kahani released because she was just celebrating the success of Dirty Picture at that point. Um,
Correct.
so it was very interesting how you've always selected even Taapsee in Badla, because obviously Pink had happened, she had had that breakthrough, but yet the films that they've done with you have really portrayed their craft as actors in a very on a more darker spectrum, but perhaps never been explored to that level before. So again, is this something you always consider in your female leads? Is always that perhaps that rawness that's left within the polished actors themselves?
Yeah, because you know, like when you're writing, Anuj, you have certain idea of who, an image of the character. Yeah. Like if I, for example, when I saw Maya D'Souza in my head, here's a woman who's, you know, like midlife, has a daughter, works 24 hours. When she was young, she was the most gorgeous, glamorous girl on earth. You know, people would fall at her feet. So I would need, when you look at somebody, you would know, okay, this woman could have been that, you know? So it's very important for me to convince my audience, you know, I cannot put myself on screen and say, this guy used to be 6'7" when he was young. No, it doesn't work. You know, you're still small. So, you know, it's very important that you choose the right person with the right, like when we did Kahani, it was Vidya from the word go, because if you see Vidya in real life, you just want to take care of her.
Yeah. Mm.
So at that time, you know, it was so vulnerable, so but yet there was some strength inside her, you know. So, and similarly with Naina Sethi, Tapsi, you know, like she was a typical businesswoman, strong, shrewd, focused, calculated, very single-minded, very you know. And I think that my greatest fun was when I did Ahalya with Radhika.
Yeah, actually, that's a very underrated one, actually.
Yeah, so you know, when we did Ahalya and Radhika, it was like, should are you sure? But I saw Radhika and I knew that there was something amazingly attractive about her, you know, something extremely sensuous about her, which she hasn't portrayed on screen. And that's just the instinct you have, because putting somebody extremely glamorous in Ahalya's role doesn't work.
No.
So you have to have somebody like Radhika who's like an unattainable object. So yeah, so yeah, sometimes you go right with the call, sometimes you don't go right with the call, but thankfully most call with my female artists have gone right, and they have been mind-blowing. You know, all of them have taken my writing to another level.
Let's talk about the villains in your films, because honestly, I remember watching Bob Biswas in Kahani, and I'll tell you who he reminded me of. Now we have a serial killer. There's a serial killer story in UK about Rosemary West. I'm not sure if you've heard of her, but
Rosemary West?
she's very prolific. She looks absolutely terrifying because she looks so ordinary. It's those glasses, it's that face, and I think I saw that embodiment through Bob. What has really paid I mean, what do you think has really contributed towards the way you shape these villains in a very quirky manner?
But you write it like that. Like for example, when Bob, let's take Jaideep. Naren was an easy task because a lot of it was in the book. Here's a man who's tall, who's basically King Kong, who's a human version of King Kong.
Sure.
You know, who's young, who's let himself go, so he's kind of lost a lot of hair. He's looks a little more aged than what his actual age is. He's been sitting for a while, so most of the day he's sitting, so he's got a little pot belly. Yet he chooses his discipline. He does his jujutsu every evening. So that was quite that was easy. With Bob, what I wanted to create fear in your head. And I think the greatest fear in anybody's head is the fear of unknown. Okay. So what I thought was, if you knew this guy was an assassin, you probably wouldn't be that scared if you don't know if he's an assassin. So if there's somebody sitting beside you and you can't judge that person, it's more scary than if you could. So that was the principle I created Bob on. Like, he's not your regular leather-clad sniper, telescopic lens assassin. He's a normal guy. He's your next door neighbor. He could be walking beside you on the street. You wouldn't know, and he'd bump you off. So that's the call I took, and paid off. So that's how you do it. I guess when you write, you try to create characters who would be memorable. Because normally what happens in a film, the protagonist or the main written characters get a lot of screen time and a lot of scope to establish themselves. So when you're writing the side characters, the people who are supporting them, you have to write them in a manner so they're also memorable. So that's what I try to do. Every character that I write, I try to create a memory. Like, I don't know if you've seen this film Bob Biswas.
Yeah, of course, Abhishek Bachchan's one. Yeah.
So when I created Kalida, so I had to create a nice quirky character of Kalida, and otherwise you won't remember it. Otherwise you won't remember the film.
That's a very good point, actually, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I feel like when you began with Jhankaar Beats, then you ended up doing films like, of course, Home Delivery, Aladin. I mean, these are very distinguished films. I mean, they're not your. I mean, with certain filmmakers, you can kind of tell from the beginning of their careers that, okay, this is where they're going to lead up to. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see similarities in a lot of their works, and you can kind of feel that pattern. But I think with yours, it almost felt like, it was, again, like you said, you were trying, you were risking, and you were doing stuff, which in Jhankaar Beats had worked quite well. But then obviously in Home Delivery and Aladin, it not so much. But then when Kahani came, it completely changed the dynamics. So do you feel like, I mean, how difficult was it for you to actually do at a time when films were not working out, your initial works were not working out, especially when they were on a bit of a bigger scale like Aladin as well? How much of an introspection did you have to do as a filmmaker and as an artist at that point?
The worst part about our industry is your failure doesn't really teach you anything. Yeah, because Jhankaar worked, didn't mean home delivery would work. Okay. Because Aladin didn't work, didn't mean Kahani wouldn't work. So I think each film, Anuj, comes with its own demands, own requirements. And it's the story which you get excited about, you believe in, and you want to tell, and you tell it. Okay? Because वो सोचना बेकार है कि what did I do wrong in Aladin? What did I do wrong in home delivery? So why didn't it work? Because there is no answer. If I could crack that, then there's no fun in making films. That means I've cracked it. I've made filmmaking into mathematics. So I know exactly tick, 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 tick. Film is good. But that's not how it is. So so you just choose stories which you believe in, and you try to tell them. Like when we did Kahani, post Kahani, we really wanted to talk about children being abused, and just wanted to bring that into the open, the need to protect our children. So we did Durga, we did Kahani too. So it's just what you believe in, and what you feel should be said, because film is an extremely important medium. A lot of people listen to you when you're telling a story. Whether they choose to remember or not, it's a different thing. That depends on how well you tell your story.
Yeah.
But I think if you can, you should say those things you believe in.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. And I think, again, the way you've managed to really break through and to emerge as a producer as well, because you've produced some really good content, like I mentioned Teen earlier, um, uh, and Blind as well recently. It's wonderful to see how you've also established yourself as a production company too. But then at the same time, for you as a filmmaker to also have the commercial backing of other production houses. I mean, of course, you had Pen Movies in Kahani. Then you also had Red Chilies in Bob Bishwash and Badla. Then, of course, in Jaane Jaan, you've got Ekta Kapoor. So again, Balaji, so how important is it to balance, now when you are a producer, to balance the economic side of things with your creativity? Do you ever find it a bit of a conflict per se?
Conflict is not the right word, but it's definitely something we cannot ignore. That's the commerce part of filmmaking, which you cannot ignore. I would love to ignore. And so I'm a director, I'm so creative, I want this, I want that. But the fact is, if it's my money, I can ignore. But if I'm taking money from Anuj, I'm responsible to Anuj, I'm accountable to Anuj. Okay. That has some bearing, that does lead to some restrictions, but you have to live with it. You cannot ignore it. If your budget, the kind of money you have for a film which allows you to shoot for let's say 42 days, you have to finish your film in 42 days. I would love to shoot a film for 100 days, but brother, that's not happening. Then you find your own money, you sell your house and do it. But if I'm taking money from someone else and that's the money I have, so be it. So yeah, you're right. It definitely helps to have a partner. It definitely helps to shoulder the responsibility to somebody else. Like, for example, Jaane Jaan wasn't Balaji, it was more Northern Lights and 12th Street, across. And it helps but at the same time, we cannot lose our objective of there is a ceiling. We cannot let go of that, otherwise you're just plunging yourself into some quicksand and there's no fucking coming out.
Yeah.
You have to keep that in mind as much as possible. Sometimes things do go wrong, like when I was doing Bob, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So everything went kaput for 2 years. But then again, that happened to everybody. It's not just me. God just didn't choose me to fuck my happiness. So it was.
Yeah, God never fucks anyone's happiness, bro. It's only humankind. हम सब खुद वाट लगा रहे हैं. बेचारे भगवान को हमेशा दोष देते रहते हैं हम.
Yeah, sorry, Bhagwanji. And so that's what I'm saying, like sometimes we make things very personal, like,
Yeah,
oh, why me? The whole world and God and everybody is conspiring against me to make my life. It's not like that. There are the
yeah.
people who are worse than us. The people who we are quite lucky that way. God has been extremely kind to us that way,
Bilkul.
that we could still make a film even waiting for 2 years for COVID.
Really, honestly, I mean, especially for me, from a personal point of view, like if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have been introduced to doing Zoom interviews, and I think that's honestly something I mean, of course, not to kind of, minimize the damage that this has done. I mean, of course, it's claimed lots of lives and it's very serious, but it is about being grateful, at least at the end of the day. And I totally agree with you on that. But I think going forward now, Sujoy, um,
Mm.
amongst all the themes and the sort of, tropes that we've dissected from your cinema,
Mm.
going forward now, what would you say is your focus as a director? What sort of stories now will you be interested? Because I think you've definitely cemented yourself in terms of telling a thriller stories, which is great. But I think what sort of styles would you be really keen on revisiting? Any kind of other actors you'd be interested in working with in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's so many actors I would want to work with. But again, all would depend on the script. And you rightly said we have to choose. And I think right now, I the kind of content I want to choose, I would like to attract the younger generation. Whose benchmarks are much more stringent, who are a lot more global, and as a result, they're a lot more accepting of different subjects. So you can give them a different subject. They're more than happy to watch it.
Hmm.
And they're extremely tough to please. you know so yeah, we need to move, create new worlds. I feel, I mean, that's where I would want to delve into, to create newer worlds, whether it's a time travel, whether it's space, whether it's uh, something supernatural. But these are the worlds I would really want to delve into also. And I think what's happening, filmmaking is really moving at an extremely fast pace. Like there are new faculties every day. Like initially when we started out, there was editing, cinematography, blah blah blah. Now technology is a massive faculty.
AI. Hmm.
I really would want to learn technology and how to harness that in making a world for myself.
Hmm.
Because you keep continuously working, you don't update yourself. You don't do a course, you don't do. So, and I think I would want to do that. I would really want to spend some time learning about technology, learning about the new innovations that's happening within the film world, so I can actually employ them in my films. Right now, I have very limited knowledge, so I
Hmm.
think that's the way forward for me, at least.
Hmm.
So I can tell the same story. I can tell the story of I can do a love story like Jaane Jaan. Instead of Kalimpong, I can set it in space or moon or Mars
Oh,
or
that would be
whatever.
interesting.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying, that yeah, like that.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask you this, but I actually think it's a very, and I would love to hear your perspective on it actually. Obviously AI has been quite, it's become a very normal part of our lives now, and I think it'll become a lot more. I mean, it terrifies me to say that, but I do think that's exactly where the world is heading to at this moment in time. Of course, you know about the sort of strikes that's going on in America at the moment because it's obviously, people are concerned of, you know, executives and producers capitalizing on hard-earned human effort, but then substituting that for AI and continuously profiting from that and giving nothing to the humans who have worked. So how do you feel about AI in specifically, maybe in terms of the Indian uh, film industry aspect as well? Are you worried that it could perhaps substitute for human effort, or what do you think is something? I mean, what do you think we can do to maybe prevent that from happening?
I don't think you can prevent anything from happening, because this is a natural progress. This is what, when we were doing computer science in Manchester, there was a huge AI faculty in Carnegie Mellon, in CMU, where they had a huge AI faculty, and they were discussing AI at a lower stage, you know, like, but now the same thing is massive. And you have to harness it, Ray. You have to harness, you cannot run away from things which are imminent. What you can do for me, you would need to learn and employ it in your benefit. I mean, that's what the way I would look at it, right? Rather than thinking, "Arey yaar, AI aa gaya to," yes, there will be job loss. Yes, there will be a lot of things there. But, you know, just like how you got acquainted with Zoom interviews, right? And you found a new way of doing things, you know. So we will find new ways of doing things. You know, AI is great. I think AI is fantastic, scary nevertheless, but still, it's a great helping hand. Like when it's like, you know, like we once made a short film called Anukul. I don't know if you've seen Anukul.
Heard of it.
Yeah. So basically that's on AI, which we made. So basically they say humans are only good enough, you know, smart enough to make robots. But when the robots are made by humans, they become smarter than humans.
Yeah. It's like Frankenstein.
So we are just smart enough to make them, you know, but when after we make them, they become smarter than us, which is a fucking amazing thing. So
and equally terrifying. But no, I think it's definitely something which I think we'll definitely have a conversation on that in the near future. I'm sure whenever you make a film to do with technology and technological aspects as well. But honestly, Sujoy, it's always so wonderful to hear your insights in your films and your inspirations of work and the cinema that you've created. And I think Jaane Jaan is definitely here to stay in our memories, and it's doing really well digitally right now. So a huge congratulations
yeah,
once again.
thank you so much. Thank you
And
so
thank
much,
you
Anuj.
so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll catch you at O2 Center again later.
For sure, definitely. Yes, we must. We must.
We'll do that
All right.
again.
Sure,
Bye.
definitely. All right, bye, Sujoy. Bye.
Bye.